Hey.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Jasmine Colette Olhauser. I play and sing in Blue Moon Marquee.
Full time.
Yeah.
And you've got a bit of a break coming up.
Yes, indeed. A bit of a forced break. Yeah, it's rare for us to take this much time off the road, but I will be out for 8 to 10 weeks because I am having my 5th and hopefully final abdominal surgery in a couple weeks. I finally am ready to share and want to share more about it. For a long time, I didn't talk about it for various reasons. One of them being I wasn't quite ready to be a poster girl for a disease. I feel inspired to share at this time for not some kind of pity party for me, but for all the women dealing with this and basically being an advocate and a voice for women's health, and for all the young women and folks with female reproductive organs who are going to deal with this disease that I have called endometriosis, which is not easy to say and or spell. A lot of people call it endo for short. I want this disease to be in the lexicon of everyday people. It should be known. It's way more common than you would think. It affects roughly 1 in 10 women to varying degrees of severity. So there's a very high chance that you know someone dealing with this. And maybe they don't even know it yet, because a very common story with women is that they are misdiagnosed, dismissed.
What was your road to diagnosis like?
A tale all too common, unfortunately. I always had bad pain when I would bleed, and I was told that's just what it's like, and some have it worse than others, so just deal with it. It started getting really bad in my late 20s. It eventually got so bad I had to go to the hospital one night, drove myself to the hospital. I'd taken many trips at this point to my various GMs. I was living on the road a lot as well, so I would drop into a clinic wherever I was if I had time to try to explain what was going on. And so often these doctors, all of them male, they wouldn't even make eye contact with me. They would barely listen to me. They would haphazardly write out a script for pain meds, just write me off, basically. Nothing you can do. I never even heard the word endometriosis uttered to me, even after my first surgery. That doctor didn't even mention to me that that is a disease that women have. I didn't even hear about it.
So they suggested that you have a surgery before even knowing what was going on?
So I had multiple things going on, and this is also a common story with endometriosis. So what endometriosis is, it's cells and growths that are very similar to the uterine lining, which we grow and shed every month with our cycle. And for whatever reason, there's varying types of it. It grows outside the uterus. So these cells they grow all over your abdominal cavity and can stick and fuse your organs together. There's cases that have been in women's lungs. It can be in your bowels. It can be inside of your uterus as well. And the only way that it can be properly diagnosed is if they go in laparoscopically. They cannot see it on an MRI or ultrasound. That's another thing that's been very frustrating, why I want to speak up about it more. It's a systematic problem. It has to do with patriarchal systems and women's health not being seen as something important, you know. So eventually they found out after numerous scans and ultrasounds that I had fibroids and cysts, which are also very common with women who deal with endometriosis, and not, but often is the case when you have it. So first they found multiple fibroids. I had 5 or 6. The largest one was the size of a grapefruit, 9 centimeters. And then I also had cysts, and I had had a few cysts rupture, which is agonizing. So the first surgery I had was a myomectomy, which is a split from hip to hip, 13 staples, where they removed these growths. And before that surgery, and while they were in there and afterward, like I was never told about endometriosis, but often like the severe pain that women talk about is sheer agony. Like I'm talking debilitating, take you out. I've passed out numerous times from the pain. There's this really fascinating Australian artist named Eugenie Lee. She created this haptic belt that you can wear, which is a pain simulator, after talking to many women who've described the pain. And I've also talked to a lot of women who've also been pregnant and given birth, and they compare the pain. Some of them have said endo pain is worse than labor pain. And of course, everyone has different experiences with the severity, but when you get this common story of this is the intensity, it's just staggering and shocking to think of how many women are suffering in silence with this type of pain. And so this performance art with Eugenie Lee, you know, there's stories of big, strong, grown men putting this on, and it just taking them out, basically. And then women putting it on, and they don't flinch. And they're like, I'm in the grocery store in a lineup with this kind of pain. So it's quite fascinating to think of that empathy that can grow from an experience like this, like we were talking about earlier. Until you can actually experience it, the old walk a mile in someone else's shoes, you truly cannot relate and have true empathy. So, you know, the significance of being aware of people who are dealing with this on a daily basis, this chronic pain and this invisible chronic pain. It's also the very difficult part of this disease, is that essentially you look fine. So that is part of the dismissal of like, oh, it can't be that bad, you know? When I was first discovering what I had and dealing with it, I found some online support groups, and I would meet other women with it. And there's just devastating, very, very dark stories about women who they've lost their lives. They lost their husbands in their marriage, lost their jobs because they actually cannot go to work. And a lot of them lost their lives, actually. There's a high suicidal rate. So it's crucial to talk about. And I think we can even start with it being in schools, start with it being in sex ed classes, in health classes. And for both females and males and trans folks and anybody should learn about and know about this. We really need to move past these dark ages of not talking about women's cycles and not being able to openly and freely discuss what's going on here.
One of the things that strikes me is how easily this might be written off as just intense period pain.
Yeah, which they shouldn't be. Periods should not be intense pain. So if you do have intense pain, there's something going on. And also a struggle with it, which I touched on a little bit before, was just how much you have to press and stand up for yourself and like demand that they pay attention to you instead of being written off. I can tell you probably over 20 doctors I saw throughout the years who just no help. There's more and more awareness happening, but it's too slow.
Mm-hmm. Which is why you want to share about this.
Yeah.
Because have you ever really had anyone to talk to about this, or like?
Not really. And part of that was me choosing not to talk about it. My family and people close to me, no. But often, no, it's a very lonely disease. The profession that I'm in, being a performer, I mean, you kind of got to grit through a lot. But this in particular really, really wore down on me throughout the years. Being on tour and being in pain and having to play through pain. And with what I do on stage, it's very physical. To put it in perspective again, to try it. So one time, I was on tour. We were in Alberta. We were in Lethbridge. And I was having a particularly bad day. Mostly when I was ovulating and when I was bleeding is when the pain would be at its top. But I had chronic pain. And it would get quite bad. So I was playing a show and I played a set and I went out back to the back alley and I was leaning against the wall just trying to breathe and just trying to think of how I'm going to get through this. And the sound tech came out to have a smoke. Like, oh, you got cramps? You know? Yeah, something like that. And we stood out there for a bit and then he looked at me more and he said, the way you're standing and how you're holding your belly reminds me of my little brother when he was having an appendicitis attack. And I said, oh, really? He's like, yeah. It's interesting. And I just kind of kept on my mind. But then he's like, okay, you're all right? I'm like, yeah, I'll get through this. Played another set. And then at the end of the night, loading up and loading our gear back in the van, it was continuously getting worse. And I barely made through the night. I thought I better go to the hospital the next day. And when I did go to the hospital, they immediately shoved me in for emergency surgery because the endometriosis was in fact smothering the appendix to the point where it was about to burst. So they had to go in there and cut through it all and remove my appendix. When you normalize pain like that, it really can numb you out and it can just alienate you. And people can make false judgments, and it really opened up my heart and mind in a lot of ways. Meeting people who seem, irritable, impatient. So often it can be they're just in pain.
Life, or is there hope to not have to deal with this?
Well, at this point, there's no cure, and part of that reason is due to, lack of research. So this time I am getting a full hysterectomy. I'm keeping one ovary. So when you keep an ovary, it doesn't kick you into menopause. So it won't affect my hormones, which will be a whole other thing. So this time they're taking the uterus, the cervix, and one of my ovaries. They're going to see which one is in the best shape. One of them was getting all twisted and contortion and causing a lot of pain that way. So we'll see which one's in the best shape and keep that one. And then they'll also remove any endo in there.
And the hope is in having these things removed that there's less to be constricted.
Yeah, and you're essentially removing the organ. So I won't bleed anymore. But for some women, they still somehow have it, which is a bizarre mystery because you do not have a uterus, which is creating the endometrial lining anymore. Thankfully, most women I have talked to who have had it have said they've had a significantly improved quality of life and significantly less pain. So that is my hope. I'm trying to see it in a different light, in that one doctor's theory about these cells is that they are essentially life force energy itself. These are life-giving cells. And that's how powerful they are. And that is why they're so difficult to suppress, because it wants to give life or have life somehow. You know, it's, again, I think about the movie Alien. But I'm trying to approach it with love and kindness and a gentleness about it, instead of, in the past, you can get to a dark place with suffering and with an ailment like this. And because at times it really felt like I was being punished or something. You can spiral with just thinking of the generations of women who've gone through this pain, back to, women who were seen as hysterical. And hysteria, by the way, comes from history. That's where the root of the word comes from. And I just think about generations of women just in intense pain and just being completely disregarded. So tides need to shift here. It's long overdue.
Having had the fortune of watching you perform, I mean, for those who haven't seen you, you're playing bass, you're playing drums, you're like in the embodiment of giving. And I know it's not just a feminine quality, generosity, but when I think of the feminine essence, it's so nurturing, so giving. And to know that, to know that you have had support despite feeling alone in this, I think that's something I would like to see for more women, is just feeling supported, because women support so much life here.
Right. The caregivers.
Yeah, the nurturing ones. And so I hope that your recovery, comes back to you. Everything all the giving you've done. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.